from the screens? Why is that? Why is it World War II movies have disappeared from the screens? What were we saying in 1941? I want to play this on the air, by the way, very soon, and we're going to do it. You remember the pieces about the Japanese? Like the Why We Fight? I've got the whole series. I've got it on VHS before they tried to edit some of it, and I've got it on DVD now because some of our friends sent me copies from around the country. The Japanese military controls the government. You can be on the street at any time, and the Japanese military will come out and grab you. And you will go before a Japanese military tribunal. And you can be tortured by that Japanese military tribunal. Wait a minute. Okay, let's take Japanese out. Wait a minute. This sounds just like America. America 2005, 2007, 2008. Now beware. Have you ever watched the movie Aliens? We kind of joke, never stand near the ceiling tile. You never know what's coming through. Okay, but Aliens? Okay. Well, you might even be your pet for a little bit, but once it's eaten enough, eventually it runs out of food, and you're the next one. It's eyeing. Study not too closely the ways of your enemy, lest they become yours. Study not too closely the ways of your enemy, lest they become yours. Study not too closely the ways of your enemy, lest they become yours. At the end of the American Revolution, the Founding Fathers had won. What was the end result? Now again, people would say, well, it wasn't like we think. I throw that out the window. The bottom line is this. At the end of the American Revolution, unlike the French Revolution, unlike the Bolshevik Revolution, unlike Pol Pot, we did something nobody else did. Now, we had people. There was Tory militia, and there were Patriot militia. There were British forces, and there were other forces in this country, the 13 colonies at the time, that we had fought tooth and nail with for 8 long years. Now, somebody would say, well, wait a minute, Yorktown, everything stopped. No, it didn't. What happened is a cessation of ground hostilities by the uniformed forces, but militia forces continued to fight right up until the end of the signing of the armistice. For 8 years, the militias fought tooth and nail, and at the end, they realized we had people here that we had fought against. The French Revolution started with a guillotine, first killing the people that were the opposition, and then killing the people who killed the people who were the opposition, and then killing the people who killed the people who killed the opposition, ad nauseum. In the Russian Revolution, you can't count the bodies that are buried. I ask you, I don't know if you have a copy here, it is called Katyn. How many people are familiar with Katyn? Katyn is one of the several burial sites that was exhumed of the Polish Officers Corps, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, veterinarians, you name it, and it was a little spike, a little crack over the door to see what the whole of the Soviet system was like. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a second. In America, here's what happened in 1783. It was called the Year of Tears for the Tories. And it didn't last a year, by the way. At the end of the American Revolution, the explanation was this: we fought each other. I don't plan on killing you, but I'll tell you what, you got 90 days to get to the border. We deported 1/5 of the population that were aggressors against us. We didn't kill them, although there were some that were arrested because they were involved in high crimes. But we deported 1/5 of the population with a concept that was laid down called justice tempered with mercy. In the French Revolution, that didn't exist. Mercy was a quick death with the guillotine. In communist Russia, that's why I'm going to come back to this, because here's what's coming to America. And I will never, ever, ever do what I was taught as an intel analyst ever again. At Kosi-Gori, trenches were dug 150 yards wide and the height of 2 human beings in width. The depth was approximately 15 feet. 500 men were brought in by train at a time. They were marched in formation, most being military, to a point in the woods where the ditches had been dug. When they got there were barrels waiting. The Soviet system had barrels the companies that did one thing. It was only one, they cut uniform lengths of rope for execution victims, and then they barreled them. The barrels were waiting, already designated in an area for the prisoners. Each person then had his hands put behind his back. They were tied there. Then, now here's the thing, some didn't go along with that, like you're saying right now, oh, I wouldn't let him do that to me. Oh, don't worry. There are some that tried not to at that point. Unarmed, disarmed, taken prisoner, walked into the system, run by the Interior Police, an exec copy of the American Heartland/Homeland Security Forces. If you resisted, what they did is this. They took your greatcoat that typically they wore because they were allowed to keep their greatcoats. They would pull it up over their head, and as they did that, another man would reach over in another barrel which was full of sawdust. They would grab the sawdust and shove it in your mouth to choke you. Dry sawdust isn't a good thing to have when it's shoved down your throat. And as they did that, two men would walk up with Mosin-Nagant rifles, and they would bayonet you first at the belt line, then on the kidneys, and then last at the base of the lungs, and then they would kick you off to the side. And all the rest of you waiting get to see what happens if you resist. While he's withering around on the ground, gasping in his blood, you put your hands behind your back, or you can join him. But here's the problem. When you put your hands behind your back and they tie the rope, they line you up and they take you down into the hole. And one at a time, they had each person lay down on their knees and flop their face down into the mud. And after they filled the whole line up for 150 yards, a guy with a Tokarev pistol walked along and at the base of the skull went like cordwood. He stacked a whole line of people. Oh, but that's not the worst. Those guys put their faces down in the mud, people. The next batch were walked in and had to put their face down in what was left of the back of the guy's head that had just been executed. And every man or boy, no matter how young or old, no matter what their supposed crime was laid down one after another. And they stacked them 12 foot deep. And then they did it again until they filled the whole ditch up, and then they covered it up. And oh, by order of Stalin, don't worry, this didn't go to waste. This is awful darn good.